Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the space station, watching something that should have been impossible. 3 massive ships hung in space near Earth, each one bigger than any city he had ever seen. They were not human ships. After 200 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally found proof they were not alone in the universe. The alien vessels had appeared 6 hours ago without warning. Every radar and sensor on Earth had gone crazy at the same time. The ships did not attack or threaten. They just waited in perfect formation above the planet like they were taking their time to study the small blue world below them. Morrison was 45 years old and had spent most of his life in space. He had walked on Mars, mined asteroids, in the belt, and commanded ships to the outer planets. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. His hands shook slightly as he held the communication device that would let him talk to beings from another world. Dr. Lisa Grant stood next to him, her face pressed against the window as she stared at the alien ships. She was 38 years old and had studied life in extreme places all over Earth. She had found bacteria living in boiling water, creatures surviving in acid, and plants growing in places that should have killed them instantly. Even so, the idea of talking to aliens made her heart race with excitement and fear. "Captain," said Commander Ryan Bell from his station, "we are getting a signal from the lead ship. They want to talk." Bell was a military man who had fought in the Mars colonies and knew how to handle dangerous situations. His voice was calm, but Morrison could see the tension in his shoulders. Morrison took a deep breath and nodded. "Put them through." The main screen flickered and showed something that made everyone on the bridge step backward. The alien was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow with its own light. It had 4 arms and eyes that were much larger than human eyes. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Corvain of the Galactic Federation. We have been watching your species for some time. You have finally developed the technology to travel between stars, so we are here to welcome you to the greater community of intelligent life." Morrison found his voice after a moment of shock. "This is Captain Jake Morrison representing Earth. We are honored to meet you, Ambassador Corvain." The alien's face changed in what might have been a smile. "Captain Morrison, we would like to invite a small group of your people to visit our flagship. We have much to discuss about your world and your species' place in the galaxy." 3 hours later, Morrison found himself walking through corridors that were built for beings much different from humans. The walls curved in strange ways and the gravity felt slightly wrong under his feet. Dr. Grant walked beside him, taking notes on everything she saw. Commander Bell stayed close behind them, his hand never far from his weapon even though the aliens had been nothing but friendly. Ambassador Helen Cross completed their small group. She was Earth's best diplomat and had been chosen to handle first contact if it ever happened. She was 52 years old and had spent her career solving problems between different groups of people. Now she faced the biggest challenge of her life. Ambassador Corvain led them to a large room filled with other aliens. Morrison counted at least 20 different types of beings. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange he could barely understand what he was looking at. One creature seemed to be made of living crystal. Another looked like a giant flower that could walk and talk. "Welcome to the Federation Council Chamber," said Corvain. "These representatives come from 47 different worlds. We are a peaceful alliance of species that work together to explore the galaxy and share knowledge." Dr. Grant could not help but stare at the different life forms around the room. "How many species are in the Federation?" she asked. 847 at last count," replied Corvain. "Each one brings something unique to our community. We are very interested to learn what humanity might contribute." A new alien stepped forward. This one looked like a large insect with golden wings and multiple legs. When it spoke, its voice buzzed like a bee. "I am Council Member Vexhi. We have studied your world from a distance, and we must say we are quite concerned about your species." Morrison felt Bell tense up beside him. "Concerned about what?" "Your homeworld," said Vexhi. "We have classified it as a Class 3 Deathworld. Most of our species evolved on Class 7 to Class 10 worlds, which are peaceful and safe. Your planet has weather that kills, predators that hunt thinking beings, diseases that spread through the air, and ground that shakes and splits open. How? Do you survive there? Dr. Grant laughed before she could stop herself. I'm sorry, she said quickly. It's just that we don't think of Earth as particularly dangerous. Yes, we have storms and earthquakes and wild animals, but we've learned to deal with them. They made us stronger. The aliens looked at each other with expressions Morrison could not read. Corvain spoke carefully. Dr. Grant, perhaps you do not understand. A Class 3 Deathworld contains dangers that would kill most Federation citizens within hours. The fact that an entire species evolved there and built a civilization is almost unbelievable. Commander Bell stepped forward. Are you saying that most alien species couldn't survive on Earth? That is exactly what we are saying, replied another alien that looked like a walking tree. My people come from a world with gentle rains and no predators. The very idea of your weather terrifies us. How do you sleep knowing that storms can destroy your homes? Ambassador Cross saw an opportunity for diplomacy. Perhaps our different backgrounds could be helpful to each other. We might be able to go places or do things that other species cannot. Corvain's large eyes seemed to light up with interest. That is a very interesting thought, Ambassador Cross. In fact, we do have a situation that might test your theory. The room grew quiet. Morrison could feel that something important was about to happen. For over 200 years, continued Corvain, we have been trying to survey a planet called Kepler 438b. It is classified as a Class 0 Deathworld, the most dangerous rating we have. Every expedition we have sent there has failed. Most crews die before they can even land on the surface. We have given up hope of ever exploring that world. Dr. Grant leaned forward with excitement. What makes it so dangerous? Vex High buzzed nervously. Everything. The air pressure would crush most beings. The gravity is more than twice what most species can handle. The temperature changes from freezing to boiling in hours. Lightning strikes the ground constantly. The plants try to eat anything that moves. The ground never stops shaking. It is a nightmare world that seems designed to kill any life that tries to exist there. Morrison looked at his team and saw the same thought in all their eyes. It sounded challenging, but not impossible. Humans had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and plagues. They had learned to live in deserts, frozen wastelands, and deep under the ocean. Ambassador Corvain, Morrison said slowly, are you asking if humanity would be willing to attempt this survey mission? The entire room went silent. Every alien eye turned to look at the small group of humans. Morrison could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. This was humanity's first test in the galactic community. Corvain nodded carefully. We would understand if you declined. No one would think less of your species for refusing to attempt something so dangerous, even suggesting it might be cruel of us. Morrison smiled and looked at his team. Dr. Grant nodded eagerly. Commander Bell gave a sharp nod of agreement. Ambassador Cross took a deep breath and nodded as well. Ambassador Corvain, Morrison said in a clear voice, humanity accepts your challenge. We'll survey your Class 0 Deathworld. The silence that followed was so complete that Morrison could hear his own heartbeat. Then the room exploded into shocked chatter in dozens of alien languages. Some aliens seemed excited. Others appeared frightened. A few looked like they were trying to talk the humans out of their decision, but Morrison was no longer listening to them. He was already thinking about the mission ahead and wondering what other surprises the galaxy might hold for the human race. 3 weeks after accepting the impossible mission, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the cargo bay of Earth's newest exploration ship, the UES Defiance. The ship was humanity's most advanced vessel, built for long journeys into unknown space. Morrison watched as his carefully chosen crew loaded equipment that might keep them alive on the galaxy's most dangerous world. Dr. Lisa Grant sat at a portable computer, studying every piece of information the Federation had given them about Kepler 438b. Her screen showed terrifying numbers that made most alien species refuse to even look at the data. The atmospheric pressure was 15 times stronger than Earth's. The gravity would make everything weigh more than twice as much. Surface temperatures could change from deadly cold to burning hot in just a few hours. Captain, she called out, According to these reports, the longest any expedition has survived on the surface is 4 hours and 12 minutes. That team was from the Zephyrian Empire, and they are considered some of the toughest beings in the Federation. Morrison walked over to look at her screen. The reports made for grim reading. Expedition after expedition had tried to land on Kepler 438b over the past 2 centuries. Some ships had been destroyed before they could even reach the surface. Others had managed to land but lost contact within hours. A few brave crews had sent back data for a short time before their signals went silent forever. What killed them? Morrison asked. Dr. Grant scrolled through the files. Different things for different expeditions. Some were crushed by the atmospheric pressure. Others were cooked alive when the temperature suddenly rose. One team was apparently eaten by the local plant life. Another group was struck by lightning so many times that their equipment melted. Commander Ryan Bell looked up from the weapons. He was checking. Sounds like a fun vacation spot. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez laughed as he tested an environmental suit. Carlos was 34 years old and had grown up in the deep mining stations of the asteroid belt. He was used to working in places where one mistake meant instant death. "I've worked in worse places," he said. "At least this planet has an atmosphere. I once had to repair a reactor core in hard vacuum while solar flares were trying to cook me." Geologist Amy Parker nodded in agreement. She was 29 years old and had spent years studying active volcanoes on Earth. She had been inside lava tubes when they were still hot and had taken samples from geysers that could have boiled her alive if she made one wrong move. "The constant earthquakes might actually be helpful," she said. "They'll expose new rock formations and mineral deposits that we can study." Dr. Nina Thompson looked up from the medical supplies she was packing. She was 41 years old and had served as a doctor in Earth's most dangerous places. She had treated patients during hurricanes, earthquakes, and disease outbreaks. "I'm more worried about the unknown biological hazards," she said. "We don't know what kinds of bacteria or viruses might be on this planet." Danny Walsh finished checking his survival gear and joined the conversation. Danny was a former Special Forces soldier who had been trained to survive in any environment on Earth. He had lived through desert heat, Arctic cold, jungle humidity, and mountain conditions that would kill most people. "The way I see it," he said, "it's just camping with extra steps." Morrison smiled at his team's attitude. The Federation had expected humans to be terrified by the mission data. Instead, his crew was treating it like an interesting challenge. They compared the planet's dangers to things they had already survived, on Earth and in space. The cargo bay doors opened and 3 Federation observers walked in. Morrison had been told they would be coming along to document the mission. The Federation wanted a complete record of how humanity would fail, so they could learn from it and maybe develop better safety protocols. The first observer was Zixthara, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its people came from a water world where the biggest danger was occasionally running into a floating piece of coral. Zixthara had never experienced weather, predators, or any kind of natural disaster. It wore a full environmental suit even inside. The human ship because it found Earth's atmosphere too harsh. The second observer was Ambassador Viridian, who looked like a walking tree with flowers for a head. Its species had evolved on a planet where all life was peaceful and cooperative. They had never developed concepts like hunting, fighting, or competition. Viridian had nearly fainted when it learned that humans regularly ate other living things. The third observer was Commander Keth, a tall, thin being with gray skin and large black eyes. Its people came from a low-gravity world where the strongest breeze would be considered a dangerous storm. Keth had to use a mechanical support frame just to walk around on the human ship because Earth's gravity was too strong for its body. "Captain Morrison," said Zixthara in a voice that sounded like wind chimes, "we must express our concern about this mission. Perhaps humanity should reconsider this dangerous undertaking." Morrison looked at the 3 aliens and tried not to smile. They were clearly terrified by the idea of going to Kepler 438b, and they were traveling in what humans considered to be a very safe and comfortable spaceship. "We appreciate your concern," Morrison replied, "but my team is ready for this mission. We've studied the data and prepared for the challenges we'll face." Commander Keth made a sound that might have been a worried whistle. "Captain, You do not seem to understand the level of danger involved. This planet has killed more Federation citizens than any war in our history. The environmental hazards alone should make any rational being refuse to go there. Dr. Grant looked up from her computer with a puzzled expression. Commander Keth, how many Federation species have actually tried to land on dangerous planets like this one? Very few, admitted Keth. Most of our worlds are safe and peaceful. We have no experience with the kind of extreme conditions you will face. That might be the problem, said Amy Parker. You're approaching this planet like it's an enemy to be feared instead of an environment to be understood and adapted to. Ambassador Viridian rustled its flower petals nervously. But how can you adapt to something that is trying to kill you? Danny Walsh laughed. Everything on Earth is trying to kill you if you're not careful. Storms, wild animals, diseases, poisonous, plants, extreme temperatures, unstable ground. Humans learn to survive by being smarter and more adaptable than the dangers around us. Carlos Rodriguez nodded while checking his tools. The trick is not to fight the environment, but to work with it. If there's constant lightning, maybe we can use it as a power source. If the ground shakes all the time, maybe that exposes valuable materials. If the plants are aggressive, maybe they have useful chemical compounds. The Federation observers looked at each other with expressions that Morrison guessed meant they were shocked. He realized that most alien species had evolved on worlds so safe that they had never learned to see danger as opportunity. Captain, said Zixthera quietly, what if you are wrong? What if this planet kills your entire team? Morrison was quiet, for a moment, thinking about the question. Finally, he answered, then we'll die learning something new. But I don't think we're wrong. Humans have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, and plagues that killed most of our species. We're still here because we learned to adapt to whatever the universe threw at us. Dr. Thompson finished packing her medical kit and stood up. Besides, we're not going in blind. We have better equipment than previous expeditions. We know what killed the other teams. And we're approaching this differently than anyone has before. Commander Bell activated the ship's communication system. All crew members report to stations will be leaving Earth orbit in 1 hour. Morrison looked around at his team one more time. They were calm, focused, and ready for whatever they would find on the galaxy's most dangerous world. The Federation observers, on the other hand, looked like they were attending their own funeral. Gentlemen, lady, Morrison said to his crew, let's go show the galaxy what humans can do. As the UES Defiance left Earth's orbit and jumped into hyperspace, Morrison felt a familiar excitement in his chest. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet, and he couldn't wait to see how they would rise to meet it. Behind them, Earth grew smaller, until it was just another star in the black of space. Ahead of them waited a world that had killed everyone who had ever tried to tame it, but Jake Morrison had a feeling that Kepler 438b had never faced anything quite like human determination before. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace 3 days later, and Captain Jake Morrison got his first look at the planet that had killed more Federation citizens than any war in galactic history. Kepler 438b hung in space like an angry red eye, covered in swirling storm clouds that crackled with constant lightning. Even from orbit, Morrison could see that this world was nothing like the peaceful planets most aliens called home. Dr. Lisa Grant stood at the sensor station, watching data flow across her screens. The numbers were even worse than the Federation, reports had suggested. Captain, I'm reading atmospheric pressure at 15.3 times Earth normal. Surface gravity is 2.4 times what we're used to, and the electromagnetic activity is off the charts. Commander Ryan Bell studied the tactical displays with a frown. I'm counting lightning strikes every 3 seconds across the entire planet. The electrical storms never stop. How are we supposed to land in that? Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez looked at the same data and grinned. Actually, that much electrical activity might work in our favor. We can tap into it for power. I've never seen a more reliable energy source. On the other side of the bridge, the 3 Federation observers were having very different reactions to their first view of the Deathworld. Zixthara, the crystal being, was making high-pitched sounds that Morrison realized might be panic. Its crystalline body was flickering with nervous energy. Ambassador Viridian, the plant-like alien, had gone completely still. Its flower petals had closed tightly, and its bark-like skin had turned a sickly brown color. Morrison wondered if it was the alien equivalent of fainting. Commander Keth was gripping its support frame so tightly that its knuckles had turned white. "Captain Morrison," it said in a shaking voice, "surely you cannot be serious about landing on that nightmare world." Morrison looked at the planet again. Yes, it was dangerous. The storms were bigger than anything on Earth. The lightning was constant and the very air would crush most beings. But he had seen worse things in his career. He had landed on asteroids during solar storms, explored caves on Mars that could collapse at any moment, and survived equipment failures in the cold vacuum of space. "It looks challenging," Morrison said calmly, "but not impossible. We'll need to be careful and smart about how we approach it." Dr. Nina Thompson was studying biological scans of the planet's surface. "I'm detecting plant life that shows aggressive movement patterns. Some of these organisms appear to actively hunt for prey. There are also chemical signatures that suggest toxic compounds in the soil and water." Geologist Amy Parker was practically bouncing with excitement as she looked at her geological scans. "Captain, this planet is incredible from a scientific standpoint. The constant tectonic activity is exposing mineral layers that would normally be buried for millions of years. We could learn more about planetary formation in one day here than we could studying stable worlds for decades." Danny Walsh was checking his survival equipment one more time. "The way I see it, it's like going camping in a really bad thunderstorm while an earthquake is happening. Dangerous, sure, but not impossible if you know what you're doing." Morrison made his decision. "All right, people, we're going down. Standard survey protocol, but with extra caution for the environmental hazards. We'll land near the equatorial region where the temperature variations seem most stable." Zixthera made a sound like breaking glass. "Captain, Federation protocol requires a minimum 30-day orbital survey before any landing attempt on a Class 0 world. You have been in orbit for only 6 hours. Federation protocol was written by species that evolved on safe worlds," Morrison replied. "Sometimes you have to adapt the rules to fit the situation. We've learned everything we can from up here. Now we need to get down there and see what we're really dealing with." The human crew moved to their landing stations with calm efficiency. They had done this dozens of times on other worlds, though never on one quite this dangerous. Morrison felt the familiar excitement of exploration mixed with the healthy fear that kept explorers alive. As the landing shuttle descended through Kepler 438b's atmosphere, everything that could go wrong started going wrong immediately. The atmospheric pressure began crushing the hull before they were halfway down. Lightning struck the shuttle 7 times in the first minute, overloading several systems. The temperature outside rose from freezing to boiling as they passed through different atmospheric layers. "Hull integrity down to 70%, called out Carlos from the engineering station. "But holding steady. The lightning is actually helping us by providing extra power to the shields. Navigation systems are getting confused by all the electromagnetic interference," reported Bell. "But I can still make out the landing site through the storm." Dr. Grant was taking readings as fast as her instruments could process them. "The atmospheric composition is more complex than we thought. I'm detecting at least 30 different compounds, some of which I've never seen before." The shuttle broke through the lowest cloud layer, and Morrison got his first clear look at the surface of Kepler 438b. It was like looking at a world that was constantly angry. The ground shook and cracked from continuous earthquakes. Geysers of superheated steam shot up from the surface every few seconds. Strange plants moved across the landscape like predatory animals, their roots pulling up from the soil as they hunted for prey. And through it all, lightning struck the ground in an endless display of electrical fury that lit up the alien landscape in stark, dramatic flashes. "There," said Amy Parker, pointing to a relatively flat area between 2 active geysers. "That spot looks stable enough for landing." Morrison brought the shuttle down through the chaos of wind, lightning, and seismic activity. The landing was rough but successful. As soon as they touched ground, an earthquake shook the shuttle so hard that Morrison thought they might be thrown back into the air. "Well," said Danny Walsh as he checked his equipment. "We're down," Now comes the fun part. The Federation observers had gone completely silent during the landing. Zixthera's crystal body had stopped flickering and had gone dark. Ambassador Viridian appeared to be in some kind of hibernation mode. Commander Keth was making quiet whimpering sounds and clutching its support frame. Morrison stood up and looked at his crew. Everyone ready for a walk? They put on their environmental suits and prepared to step outside. The suits were heavier than normal to handle the increased atmospheric pressure, and they each carried backup power systems in case the lightning interfered with their equipment. Dr. Grant was the first to step outside, and her reaction surprised everyone. "Oh my," she said over the radio. "This is actually beautiful." Morrison followed her out and understood what she meant. Yes, the planet was trying to kill them in a dozen different ways at once. But there was something magnificent about the raw power of nature unleashed without limits. Lightning turned the sky into a light show that would shame any fireworks display. The moving plants created patterns across the landscape like a dance choreographed by evolution itself. Carlos immediately got to work setting up a power collector to tap into the lightning strikes. "This is better than I hoped," he said happily. "We'll have more power than we know what to do with." Amy Parker was already taking rock samples from a crack in the ground that had opened during their landing. "These mineral formations are incredible. I've never seen crystal structures like this on any other world." Dr. Thompson was scanning the air and soil for biological hazards. "The toxin levels are high but manageable with our filtration systems, and some of these compounds might actually be medically useful." Danny Walsh was setting up their base camp with practiced efficiency, securing everything against the constant earthquakes and wind. "Not bad," he said as lightning struck a metal rod he had set up to ground the electrical charges. "Reminds me of that camping trip I took in Alaska during a blizzard." Morrison watched his team work and felt proud of how they were adapting to conditions that had killed every other expedition. They weren't fighting the planet's dangers. They were finding ways to work with them and turn them into advantages. Behind them, through the shuttle's windows, he could see the Federation observers still frozen in terror. They couldn't understand how anyone could function in this environment, let alone thrive in it. But Morrison was beginning to realize something important. This planet wasn't trying to kill them any more than Earth tried to kill humans every day. It was just a world with different rules, and humans had always been good at learning new rules and adapting to them. As his team began their survey work under the alien lightning-filled sky, Morrison smiled. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could accomplish when they put their minds to it. 2 weeks after landing on Kepler 438b, Captain Jake Morrison stood outside the expanding human base camp and watched his team work with an efficiency that would have amazed the Federation observers if they had been conscious to see it. What was supposed to be a short survey mission had become something much more impressive. The humans were not just surviving on the galaxy's most dangerous world, they were thriving. Dr. Lisa Grant emerged from a grove of the aggressive plant life carrying samples that glowed with strange colors. The plants had tried to grab her when she first approached them, but she had quickly learned their movement, patterns. Now she walked among them like she was strolling through a garden back on Earth. "Captain," she called out over the constant rumble of thunder, "these plants are incredible. They produce chemical compounds that could revolutionize medicine across the Federation. Some of these substances could cure diseases that have plagued alien species for centuries." Morrison nodded as lightning struck the metal collection rods that Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez had built around their camp. The rods captured the electrical energy and fed it into their power systems. They now had more electricity than they could use, and Carlos was already designing ways to store the excess energy for future missions. "How are our Federation friends doing?" Morrison asked, looking toward the shuttle where the 3 alien observers had remained since landing. "Doctor," Nina Thompson looked up from the medical station she had set up. "Zixthera is still in some kind of shock state. Its crystal structure keeps flickering on and off. Ambassador Viridian went into emergency hibernation the moment we landed and hasn't moved since. Commander Keth is awake but refuses to leave. The shuttle, it keeps asking when we're going to evacuate." Morrison almost felt sorry for the aliens. They had come expecting to document humanity's failure and death. Instead, they were watching humans turn an impossible situation into a successful mission. The constant earthquakes that should have destroyed their equipment were being used by geologist Amy Parker to map underground mineral deposits. The toxic atmosphere that should have killed them was providing Dr. Grant with new discoveries every day. Danny Walsh approached carrying a large piece of equipment that would have been too heavy for most humans to lift even on Earth. Here, under the crushing atmospheric pressure and increased gravity, it should have been impossible to move. But Danny had adapted his techniques and was managing just fine. "Base camp is secure," he reported. "I've set up weather monitoring stations around the perimeter. The storm patterns are actually pretty predictable once you understand how the atmospheric pressure changes interact with the electrical activity." Carlos looked up from the power distribution system he was building. "Danny's right about the predictability. I can tell you exactly when and where the next major lightning strike will hit. We're not fighting random chaos here. This planet has rules, just like anywhere else." Amy Parker climbed out of a deep crack in the ground that had opened during the morning's earthquake. Her geological survey equipment was covered in dust and strange minerals, but she was grinning like a child on Christmas morning. "Captain, you need to see this," she said excitedly. "The constant seismic activity is exposing mineral veins that would take millions of years to reach on a stable world. I've found deposits of rare elements that the Federation has been searching for across the galaxy. This one planet could solve resource shortages for dozens of star systems." Morrison felt a growing sense of pride in his team. They had been on Kepler 438b for 2 weeks and had accomplished more than any previous expedition. But more importantly, they had done something the Federation thought was impossible. They had found ways to make the planet's dangers work for them instead of against them. Dr. Grant returned from her latest expedition into the moving forests with news that would shock the galactic scientific community. "Captain, I've made contact with native life forms. There are silicon-based organisms living in the planet's most extreme regions. They're intelligent." Morrison stopped what he was doing and stared at her. "Intelligent life? The Federation scans never detected anything like that." "Because they were looking in the wrong places," Grant explained. "These beings live inside active lava tubes and thermal vents where the conditions are so extreme that Federation equipment can't even function. Previous expeditions never got close enough to detect them because they couldn't survive in those areas." She activated a recording device that showed strange crystalline structures moving through superheated rock like fish swimming through water. The beings were beautiful in an alien way, their bodies glowing with heat and electrical energy. "They communicate through electromagnetic pulses," Grant continued. "It took me 3 days to figure out their basic language patterns. They've been watching us since we landed, and they're amazed that organic life forms can survive on what they consider to be the cold, stable surface of their world." Morrison laughed at the irony. To the Federation, Kepler 438b was an impossible death world. To its native inhabitants, the surface was a peaceful garden where strange, soft creatures had somehow managed to live. "They want to meet you," Grant said. "They're curious about beings who can survive in both the cold surface regions and the warm volcanic areas. They think we might be able to help each other." While Morrison was processing this amazing news, Carlos called out from his engineering station. "Captain, we're getting a communication from Federation Space. It's a rescue fleet." Morrison walked over to the communication array. On the screen, Admiral Corvain looked worried and confused. Behind him, Morrison could see at least 20 Federation ships. "Captain Morrison," Corvain said, "we have not heard from your expedition in 14 days. We assumed the worst and have assembled a rescue fleet. Are you alive?" Morrison couldn't help but smile. "Admiral, we are not just alive. We're doing better than we ever expected. This mission has been a complete success." The alien admiral's large eyes widened in disbelief. "Success? Captain, you are on a Class 0 death world. How can you claim success when previous expeditions lasted only hours?" "Because we approached it differently," Morrison replied. "We didn't try to fight the planet. We learned to work with it. And we've made discoveries that will benefit the entire Federation." Morrison gestured for his team to gather around the communication device. One by one, they shared their discoveries. Dr. Grant showed off the medical compounds she had found. Amy Parker displayed mineral samples worth more than most planetary economies. Carlos demonstrated the unlimited clean energy they were harvesting from the lightning storms. The Federation rescue fleet went silent as they absorbed what they were hearing. Finally, Admiral Corvain spoke in a voice full of wonder and confusion. "Captain Morrison, are you saying that humans can not only survive on Class 0 worlds but actually thrive there?" "That's exactly what we're saying," Morrison replied. "And we're requesting permission to extend our mission from 30 days to 6 months. We've barely scratched the surface of what this planet can teach us." The silence from the Federation fleet lasted so long that Morrison wondered if the communication had been cut off. Finally, Corvain spoke again. "Captain, the Federation Council will need to meet immediately to discuss these developments. The implications of what you're telling us could change everything we know about planetary exploration and resource gathering." Morrison looked around at his team and saw the same determination in all their faces. They had come to Kepler 438b to prove that humans could handle impossible missions. Instead, they had discovered that what the Federation considered impossible was simply a different kind of normal for human beings. Dr. Thompson emerged from the shuttle with an update on their alien observers. "Commander Keth is finally willing to come outside, but only if it can wear 3 environmental suits at the same time. Zixthara is starting to stabilize, but keeps asking how we can function in what it calls concentrated death. Ambassador Viridian is still hibernating and probably will be for another month." Morrison made his decision. "Admiral Corvain, please, inform the Federation Council that humanity is requesting permanent research rights to Kepler 438b. We want to establish the first Federation research station on a Class 0 world." As he spoke these words, Morrison realized that humanity had found its place in the galaxy. They would be the species that went where others could not go, found resources that others could not reach, and made contact with life forms that others could not approach. The galaxy was much bigger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. But for the first time in Federation history, dangerous no longer meant impossible. 6 months after landing on Kepler 438b, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the main hall of humanity's first permanent research station on a Class 0 Deathworld. The building was unlike anything the Federation had ever seen before. Instead of fighting against the planet's constant earthquakes, the structure was designed to move with them. Instead of hiding from the lightning, the station used it as a primary power source. Instead of avoiding the aggressive plant life, the building incorporated living walls that helped filter the air and provided fresh food. Morrison watched as a group of Federation scientists worked alongside his human team. These aliens had volunteered to visit the station despite their species' fear of dangerous worlds. They wore multiple layers of protective equipment and moved very carefully, but they were here. The discoveries being made on Kepler 438b were too important for the Federation to ignore. Dr. Lisa Grant approached carrying a crystal container filled with glowing liquid. Next to her walked Thermax, one of the silicon-based natives of Kepler 438b. The being looked like a living sculpture made of moving lava and electricity. It communicated through flashes of light that Dr. Grant had learned to interpret. "Captain," Grant said with excitement, "Thermax has just shown us how to synthesize the healing compounds we discovered. The process requires temperatures and pressures that would kill most Federation species, but humans can handle it with the right equipment." Thermax flashed a pattern of lights that Grant translated. "It says that humans are the first soft dwellers who can survive in both the surface regions and the deep thermal areas. It wants to establish a permanent cultural exchange between our species." Morrison smiled and nodded to Thermax, who responded with a warm glow that somehow felt friendly, despite coming from a being made of molten rock. The relationship between humans and the natives had grown stronger every day. The silicon-based life forms were amazed by human adaptability, while humans learned new ways to thrive in extreme conditions. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez walked in from the Power Management Center, his clothes slightly singed from working with electrical systems that channeled lightning directly into the station's power grid. "Captain, we're now generating enough clean energy to power a small city. The Federation has requested blueprints for our lightning collection system. Apparently, they want to try installing them on Class 4 and 5 worlds." Geologist Amy Parker emerged from the underground mining operation she had been overseeing. Her team had discovered mineral deposits so rich that a single day's mining on Kepler 438b produced more rare elements than most Federation worlds could extract in a year. The Galactic Mining Consortium has submitted a formal request for human mining teams, she reported. They want us to survey 12 different high-danger worlds that they've never been able to approach safely. Morrison wasn't surprised. Over the past 6 months, requests for human assistance had been pouring in from across the Federation. Species that had given up hope of reaching certain resources or exploring dangerous regions now saw new possibilities. Dr. Nina Thompson joined them, carrying her latest medical research. Captain, the compounds we've isolated here have already led to cures for 3 major Federation diseases. The Crystalline Healers Guild wants to establish a permanent medical research partnership with Earth. Morrison looked around the station that had become a symbol of human capability. Through the transparent walls, he could see the landscape of Kepler 438b continuing its eternal dance of lightning, earthquakes, and aggressive plant life. What had once seemed like certain death now looked like home to his team. Danny Walsh came in from the perimeter where he had been training a group of Federation military observers in extreme environment survival techniques. The aliens were learning, slowly and carefully, but they were learning. The Zephyrian Defense Force wants to send 100 volunteers for human survival training, Danny reported. Apparently, they've realized that their military can't protect colonies on anything more dangerous than a Class 6 world without human assistance. Commander Ryan Bell activated the station's main communication system. On the screen, Admiral Corvain appeared along with representatives from dozens of Federation species. The weekly status meetings had become major events as the galactic community tried to understand the implications of humanity's success. Captain Morrison, Corvain began, the Federation Council has completed its review of humanity's performance on Kepler 438b. We have some important announcements to make. Morrison and his team gathered around the communication device. In the background, he could see Ambassador Viridian, who had finally come out of hibernation after 4 months. The plant-like being still looked nervous but was no longer trying to hide from the reality of what humans had accomplished. First, Corvain continued, the Federation formally recognizes humanity's claim to permanent research rights on Kepler 438b. This station will serve as the official Federation Research Center for Extreme Environment Studies. Morrison's team cheered, but Corvain wasn't finished. Second, we are creating a new classification system for planetary danger levels. Earth will be reclassified from a Class 3 Death World to a Class 1 Fortress World. This new classification recognizes worlds that produce beings capable of surviving extreme conditions. Morrison felt proud but also curious about what else the Federation had decided. Third, Corvain said with something that might have been a smile, we are offering humanity a new role within the Federation. You will become our extreme environment specialists. Any mission involving Class 0 through Class 4 worlds will be offered to human teams first. The implications hit Morrison immediately. Humanity would become the Federation's gateway to resources, knowledge, and territories that had been unreachable for centuries. It was a position of respect and importance that no one could have imagined when the aliens first arrived at Earth. There's more, Corvain added. Several Federation species have requested permission to establish colonies on human-supervised worlds. They want to learn from your techniques and benefit from your protection in dangerous environments. Commander, Keth appeared on the screen, looking much healthier than it had during the original mission. Captain Morrison, my people have decided to place 3 of our border colonies under human protection. Pirates from the Outer Rim have been attacking our peaceful worlds, but they avoid any system where humans are known to operate. Morrison, realized that humanity's reputation for thriving in dangerous conditions had unexpected benefits. Species that wanted to avoid conflict or protect valuable resources could benefit from humanity's presence. Dr. Grant looked up from her research station where she was communicating with Thermax and several other native beings. Captain, our silicon-based friends want to join the Federation as well. They're offering to share their knowledge of extreme geological processes in exchange for protection and cultural exchange opportunities. Morrison thought about how much had changed since they first arrived on Kepler 438b. What started as a test of human survival had become a foundation for new relationships across the galaxy. Ambassador Helen Cross appeared on the communication screen from Earth. Captain Morrison, I'm proud to inform you that 17 Federation species have requested formal alliance agreements with humanity. They want access to resources from dangerous worlds and protection for their colonies in hostile regions. Morrison looked around at his team and saw the same realization in their eyes. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or superior technology, but through their willingness to go where others couldn't and do what others wouldn't. Admiral Corvain, Morrison said, humanity accepts its new role in the Federation. We look forward to working with all species to explore the galaxy's most challenging environments. As the communication ended, Morrison walked to the station's observation deck and looked out at the lightning-filled sky of Kepler 438b. 6 months ago, this world had been considered impossible to survive on. Now it was home to the galaxy's most advanced extreme environment research facility and a symbol of what cooperation between species could accomplish. Morrison smiled as he watched Thermax and other native beings working alongside human and Federation scientists. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of hostile worlds and impossible challenges. But it was also full of opportunities for those brave enough to face the impossible and turn it into the achievable. Humanity had learned this lesson on Earth millions of years ago, and now they were ready to teach it to the stars.